Salutations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to a very special edition of Factions of Freedom. This is actually the Stranger Than Fiction News Simulcast, where I was actually on Ron Johnson's awesome show, Stranger Than Fiction News. I was later joined by my awesome co-host, Laurie Alexander. But without spilling too much, I would like for you guys to enjoy yourself with this broadcast, because clearly I did. With that being said, let's get to it.
This is Stranger Than Fiction News, broadcasting live from the dark side of the planet. We've got major news stories to cover. Breaking news out of Toronto: major sex ring busted, and evidence of organized child sex abuse revealed in new survey. They say 1 out of 2 victims of child abuse in Toronto were being basically pimped out by the parents, that the parents were part of this massive child sex ring. And the title of the article is "Chilling Evidence of Organized Child Sex Abuse Revealed in Survey," that just came out in the Toronto Star. But what this is telling everyone, ladies and gentlemen, is that at least one out of 2 victims is part of a major sex trafficking ring, and that the parents are involved, part of the ring. It's part of the culture. They're part of the whole Pizzagate thing, and the numbers are staggering. Just a couple years back in Toronto as well, there was a major child sex ring that was busted, and there was 400 children rescued, 350 adults arrested. Toronto is a big player on the map, and it's part of the equation. Now, we've just finished a mini documentary that's going to be playing after this broadcast, that is linking quite a few different details together. Now, the story is gonna break as a continuation of the Seth Rich saga. So many of you are aware of the Seth Rich case. But in this report, we go beyond the Seth Rich case, and we're linking some of the other notable controversies in the Hillary, Podesta email scandal. So that's going to be the new thing that we've been working on. That's going to come out here shortly in about an hour or so. So be sure to stick around for that. That's going to be a powerful awareness campaign as well. We've already put it out on our YouTube page if you are absolutely desperate to see it, but the reaction there is pretty favorable, so it's probably going to go pretty far. You're going to want to stick around for that awareness campaign and watch the trolls come on and lose their minds. That's what they do. So, without further ado, we got some special guests lined up for this show. We're going to be covering the news with them, and we're going to get their insight on where things are, because, it's nice to see what other people are thinking about all of this stuff that is happening, whether it be the Pizzagate, whether it be the endless scandals coming out of the Democrat Party, and other things. We've got a whole bunch of stuff lined up. So the first guest we're going to bring in is EJ from Freedom Faction. We just want to remind everybody that tomorrow we've got a big broadcast lined up as well with it'll come back to me. We got a major broadcast lined up with Dr. James Fetzer, and so that we're going to be talking about the deep state, and that's going to be some pretty intense stuff. So right now, we're going to bring in Freedom Faction. They are an up-and-coming page on Facebook and various other social media outlets, and we're going to get their point of view on different things, and we're going to be covering the stories with them. We're going to see if Freedom Faction is online. It should be happening. But the first stories that we'll cover. Oh, hold on. We got Freedom Faction online live on STFN. What's going on, EJ?
Salutations, Ron. Salutations, Stranger Than Fiction News team. How are you guys, my friends?
Well, we're still out here. It's another day in the neighborhood, and we're just keep fighting the fight. So we're gonna cover the news together. We're gonna do this. We're gonna try to do the best we can covering the news and having a back and forth on the various issues, and try to entertain the audience in the process. Not always an easy feat, but I guess we kind of want to start out with what was on the front page of the Drudge Report. There's this nice picture of this sorry band of Luciferians that's leaving the White House, and they all got the blues, and it shows. And these are the people that were destroying our country. Viewers can see this. EJ, you may see it if you're looking at the feed, but in any case, these were the Luciferians that were nosediving our country into oblivion, pushing us towards World War III, inverting our reality, saying that wicked is good. I mean, what's been your take on this administration for the last 8 years? I know you're out there in the Southwest, and you may have a different take than other people, but what do you think? How was the last 8 years for you? How did you see it?
The last 8 years, I mean, politically, I feel like a lot of people kind of experienced a tightening, a fluctuation. There really was no real stability. I mean, other than lawlessness. That's all I really feel like you could say. We got people coming in from Mexico. You got people who don't even live here or even want to work here that are still here, somehow able to get welfare. Politically, it's hard to try to encapsulate how the past 8 years have been. But what we can see these days is a lot of lawlessness coming to a head, and that's why we're seeing people, light themselves on fire outside of Trump's tower or outside of the White House. That's why we're seeing so many different protests erupt. That's why the whole J20 thing is taking place. I feel like that encapsulates or symbolizes the entire administration and what they've created. And I'm not saying, I'm not saying I advocate Trump or I'm advocating Obama or anything at all. I feel like our overall goal is to break the left-right paradigm. But I feel like with what we're seeing, it embodies just that, what the whole 8 years have produced. And what we're seeing now as a response is people like yourself, people like Laurie Alexander, people like Howard Nema, who are waking up and trying to help other people see how this is all some kind of orchestrated chaos, how it is meant to put us against one another, and the real enemies are the people who are behind the left-right paradigm. So as far as how to summarize the past 8 years, it's been total hell, and we've been forced to create our own way of dealing with it. We got people doing all kinds of transgender things, and I'm not saying I hate gays or anything like that, but with political correctness, racism and all this other stuff, this psyop mind control stuff that doesn't really advance us as a species, we're starting to see that come to a head within these next few days. And that's all I'm trying to say. There's no real way to explain, financially how people have had the squeeze put to them, or how culturally people have had to do different things. There's no way to explain all that, but I think genuinely and generally people are upset. At the same time, on the offset, you have people who are waking up and seeing the evil deeds of these people and how they're trying to get us to operate within this 160 characters approved reality. And as such, we're having people break the matrix. So I don't know. It's an interesting time to be alive, nonetheless. And crazy as it has been, it's on us to do something about it.
Yeah, well said, sir. Well said. I mean, I think everybody feels the same thing, that things just keep getting worse and worse. I'm still stuck like perpetually in the 90s. I still remember partying like it was 1999. I was a college boy back then, and I was just living it up. And I was just like, life is good. It's perfect. It's peaceful. We can do what we want. There's jobs everywhere. People are happy. And all of a sudden, it's just like, boom, there was 9/11, then boom, here came the Orwellian state, and then boom, here came the endless wars, and all of a sudden it's like Department of Homeland, Stasi everywhere, everybody's being spied upon. It's like, what happened? All of a sudden it's like we stepped into a different dimension. And then, you know, you kept seeing more and more halftime shows, Illuminati, pyramid, this and that, and
Yep.
you know, you started seeing all sorts of other shady behavior, and then it all came to a head like during this campaign. Boom, the big vindication. Like, here comes the email. Oh, spirit cooking. You know, come get the hot dogs. And all of a sudden, people understood the coded language. They saw the videos of the spirit cooking. They saw the pictures of Marina Abramovich with all of the celebrities. And all of a sudden, it's just like, wow, everything we've been thinking, it's true. It's true. It's not our imagination. These people are hardcore Luciferians. And yeah, go ahead.
Can I say something real quick?
Yes, sir.
Within the past 8 years, and I'll be honest, for people who want to do some quick math, I graduated back in 2010. Okay, so it's 7 years later. So I kind of grew up with the post 9/11 state and into all of this. So my whole high school, into college, into where I'm at today, it has been just a decrypt. It's been like an evolution of having to see the craziness.
Okay, hold on. You said 2010. Was that high school or college?
It was high school.
Okay, so like 2010. So like you don't even remember the free world, do you?
Not really as a kid, man. I really remember like where I was at. I was at a daycare center.
That's the problem in the world today. Is like we've talked about this previously. Is like everybody that's like 25 and younger, 30 and younger, they never knew the free world. They never knew the pre 9/11 world, which is scary because they have a whole different frame of reference. They have a whole different way of thinking about things. To them, like 1984 Orwellian, Homeland Stasi is normal, Yeah. But I'm happy to see that people like yourself not only have woken up, but are trying to wake other people up, and that should give everybody like a whole bunch of hope that even though there's a whole generation that never knew the free world, they still know about it. They still know about the free world.
That's what gets me, is because with being not necessarily indoctrinated, but being exposed to all these types of things that these people are doing, and you see it happening sequentially. I grew up watching all of the crazy YouTube documentaries that people were watching, the crazy Illuminati conspiracy videos that people were making, and they weren't conspiracies. Those were truth. I was not hearing that anywhere else. I was listening to other podcasts. I was listening to other talk show hosts, other people, other sources of information explain some of the truer things that were going on, and to see it come to a head at certain points in time, you either get to a point to where you either get engaged, and the stuff that you start seeing, it starts confirming, it starts making sense, it starts blowing your mind to where you're like, wow, what else is there? I have to get engaged. I have to tell the people. We got to do something about this. But if people don't really realize, the depths at which these people are at, if they really don't understand their enemy and how many different diverse ways they're trying to go about this totalitarian system of control, then there's no way that they'll ever know true freedom. And to me, like you said, I may not have known the free world beforehand, and that's why I stylized my name, Freedom Faction, is because I've done a lot of different things up until this point. But and what I see happening now up until this point is consistent censorship, the depreciation of human life, the lack of will to live, the lack of creativity, and all kinds of other strange things like that. And what I would consider the suppression of the human soul. And I don't know what that's about, because I like to live. I love life. I love living. I love experiencing things, and they're trying to, as I said before, they're trying to have you operate within a 160 characters approved lifestyle, to where you're having to have your thoughts calculated on whether or not they'll be part of this fake news censorship that Facebook is instituting. And real quick, I'll say this and then I'll pass it back off to you. By doing this, I've had people that are younger than me contact me, right? And I have this kid. He's like 16 years old, and he's talking to me about how basically he likes this girl. She's obviously of a different race, I guess, and I don't really care. My fiance, she's Caucasian. I'm black. I don't really care. But this kid, 16 years old, he's asking me about race. He's saying, I want to date this chick, but I don't want to be considered a race traitor. And this kid, 16 years old, what is he thinking about race trading? You're trying to figure out whether or not, your body, your hormones are still working. You don't need to be worrying about race trading or whatever that's being, you see what I'm saying? That's the indoctrination that's occurring at a deeper level. I could talk about,
I think you've touched on a whole bunch of, hot topics right there. And I guess, just to kind of like work our way back as far as like what people are thinking these days about race issues. I think there's a lot of peer pressure. I think like depending on like your community, perhaps there is a bit of peer pressure to a certain extent. I think that's always been the case to a certain extent. But I think like obviously, given what we're up against, we definitely need to see past these types of quote unquote differences. Because if we're just going to stay divided based on this type of criteria, we're never going to be able to fight the true evil. And I think like this is kind of working our way back a little bit more in what you said. Like there's hardly anybody talking about like these real issues for what they are. Like they'll talk about like some of the scandals, they'll talk about like some of the issues like on a more legalese kind of like point of view, but they won't go past like the surface. They won't go like into the Bohemian Grove. They won't go into why is there a show on television titled Lucifer. They won't go into like like all of the other things that we've seen, like say the opening ceremony for that tunnel in Switzerland, or the CERN like sacrifice, the CERN sacrifice we saw this summer, or any of the other shady things like all this beast system stuff that we see, the barcodes,
Did you see? Yeah. Did you see any of this, like all last year, basically, like up until the election, into like, what happened just the other weekend? The Satanists have been sequentially and systematically building up their infrastructure. They have a Lucifer International affiliation or some kind of association, some organization, I think in Salem, Massachusetts.
Yeah, that's it. In Witch's Paradise, they constructed the new, new like satanic like headquarters. And they just did a massive.
Then there's After School Satan.
Yep, of course. And then they just had a huge, massive satanic like black mass in L.A. And
they said it was a fundraiser though. It was all industrial and goth. They did free tattooing and things like that.
Well, and they tried to make it trendy, and it was bloodletting, and they had it in like numerous publications, and they were trying to like make it look like it was cool, like like a concert or a rave, and you wanted to go, and there were like VIP seats and this and that. But it was pretty interesting because like it gave you some of the clues that everybody should be like key on, like some of the numerology, like it started at 6 p.m. The VIP tickets were $66. Are you seeing like some of that symbolism there? Because that's important stuff to pick up on, because that is part of like the occult language that is being used in the background, and it allows them to kind of like speak between the lines in the headlines, in the news, and get out their message. And that way, like all of the cult members know to support that message. Like they'll say, like on the 6 o'clock news, 6 people were killed today, and it's an obvious false flag, but all of a sudden, boom, you got all of the Luciferians jumping on board. Oh man, it's terrible, take your guns. And they know they get these cues to jump on board, and that's just one example. But that's the language that they're speaking, and we all need to kind of like be aware that this stuff not only is it not our imagination, and not only is it a huge problem, but it's like an epidemic, and we need to see the symptoms for what they are, and we need to all get together, and see this, like all the good people of faith. It doesn't matter if you're a Baptist or a Catholic or a Protestant, we're all facing the same band of Luciferians, and they're all looking at us like we're the enemy. And we gotta see past our little trivial differences and really band together and resist this tyranny, every which way possible. United we stand.
Exactly.
Go ahead, EJ.
Exactly. I definitely agree. And that's one of the things I was talking about on my podcast pretty much all last year, is like there's a difference between people who are sacrificing children, and there's a difference between people who are actually going out to pray in the woods. There's a difference between all priests. There's a difference between priests, poleros, wizards, mages, warlocks, babalaos, like shamans. There's a difference between all these different types of disciplines. I'm not telling people to go out and practice these things, but I'm saying these things are being practiced regardless. But there's as we said before, there's an organized agenda of these Satanists where they're doing things like After School Satan, where they're creating Lucifer International places, where they're creating more satanic temples, to where they're creating more public events, to where they're literally branching out. And I know they have religious freedom. I understand that, but you've got to understand the time frame in which they're trying to do these types of things. Why is it that we're having more demon-possessed dolls take place, more strange attacks, more paranormal experiences? Why are people harping and seizing on this time frame, the energy in which they're using to do these types of things? And that's why we have to look at, as you said before, we have to band together, and that's what these people are doing. They're not smarter than us, they're not better than us, they're just more organized.
Yes.
And that's exactly what we're doing here, is we're trying to organize the people to realize that, hey, this is an organized assault against us. These people have an anti-human agenda. They wish us ill will. They want to seek to destroy us. They do not want to build us up. They are trying to systematically defame us, depopulate us, and dehumanize us, as well as extract our soul. It's crazy, the different types of things that they're doing. But if people can't realize that this is, like I said, the origins of the devil, then they don't understand how deep and how evil these people are getting.
And how dangerous dangerous it is, because these aren't like Girl Scouts trying to sell you cookies. These are people that are practicing, like, the most wicked acts possible, including the rape of children and the sacrifice of children and cannibalism, Soylent Green, all of that stuff. Again, we wouldn't be making such a big deal about it if these people were just like into baking cookies and growing flowers or whatever. But these people are into like seriously the worst of the worst, like exorcist stuff. Yeah. I mean, that's what makes this stuff so dangerous. And they're organized, and they mean the world harm. They mean to doom us all. It's right there in the Georgia Guidestones. And so this truly is a clear and present danger, and pretending like it doesn't exist is basically dooming us all. It truly is.
That's dangerous. It's dangerous because, like you said, these are people who are trying to wish us ill will. I mean, what is spirit cooking? What is the age-old tale that we've all heard? I think it was Hansel and Gretel, where the witch gets them in the pot and then puts them in there and then brews them together. I'm not sure if that's the story, but what is the age-old tale of witches cooking? What do they use with the kettle? You see, what is the broth that they create? There are people out there that are still perpetuating these types of practices and doing it for power. I mean, we've all heard, whether it be a joke, whether it be the truth, whether it be a window into who Hillary Clinton really is, we've all heard about her trying to sacrifice a chicken to Molech for power, to win. And what did that do for her? You see, she's off doing some strange things.
Well, and they're all cult members.
Yes.
I'm sorry to cut you off, but they're all cult members. All of these people that are in the government, they all have this type of thing on them. Like we saw that with the former Speaker of the House. We saw that with the Penn State thing. Yep. Like all these people that get like, super nice jobs and placements in our society, they're in there because they've been sexed into this cult. And it's the same thing with the television, and people in Hollywood have been telling everybody for years that the only way that you get into like a TV show that you can be there in front of people is by being part of this cult. And that's why they're all covering up. It's no wonder that these people on the news and stuff, they're not talking about Pizzagate, they're not talking about Bohemian Grove, they're not talking about these issues, because they're all part of this coven, and they've been sexed in. They're in it, they're in it together like a bunch of Charlie Manson groupies, and there's no going out because they've got the blackmail on them. And if they dare speak out, they'll be ruined and exposed and put in jail. So it's a tough system it's a tough kind of like criminal syndicate to crack or to infiltrate. Nobody's gonna be able to infiltrate this group unless you're willing to commit crimes against children, and they want to videotape.
And that's exactly why Hollywood is coming up in such an uproar trying to protest Trump. And this is not an advertisement for Trump. This is me trying to say that there are people in Hollywood that don't want to have their crimes expelled, because we all know that there are some strange things going on in Hollywood. I mean, that's an episode in itself, and that's why Hollywood is trying to cover up its tracks, because they know that they're very wicked, that they're doing evil things. And why else would they want to try to come out and either make it look trendy to oppose the president, or why else would they try to advocate Hillary Clinton? You see, so there's all kinds of strange things that you have to look at when it comes to politics and entertainment, especially Hollywood, and how the CIA is involved. And it's crazy because all of it really, truly is meant to distract us and destroy us mentally and spiritually. It's wild.
Well, imagine the brain damage, like voting for Hillary, given like everything that came out. and you'd still vote for Hillary, you're still fighting for Hillary. Obviously, there's something else going on, because nobody in their right mind would vote for Hillary given like all the things. Even if you were like totally secular, independent, non-biased, you saw Benghazi, you saw the private email server, you saw the pay-to-play. You'd be like, wow, there's just no way. Especially if you're like even a Bernie supporter, you'd be like, no way am I voting for Hillary after all that stuff. But they still are. And that shows you kind of like the level of the brain damage, but also shows you that there has to be something else there, because logic wouldn't compel you to vote for Hillary Clinton. There's something else there. And it's like this, it's this mutual bond that they have that isn't Democrat, it's Luciferian. And they know that they have to get their Luciferian candidate into office for their agenda to progress. And it's more so with the Democrats and the Republicans. I think the Republicans, you've got this faction that's like Bohemian Grove, warmongering, neocon and stuff like that. But some of them have to be like, Christian people that are thinking, we need to do the right thing. So I think like right now the major problem, above all else is the Democratic Party, because they're the one that's most likely to, propel us into like destruction, World War III and all that stuff. Not to mention covering up the pedophiles. I kind of want to get into some of the other stories and see, what you think about it. And it's
let's do it.
But I just wanted to add to it just another thing that just kind of came up to mind, because a lot of people right now are talking about the intelligence agencies, and they're just kind of going with the narrative that there's this big fight and this and that, and I think it's more complex than that, because these intelligence agencies have thousands of people working for them, and I think it's like there's that same political divide, and whether it be the CIA, the FBI, NSA, whatever. I think that there's people that are for the Luciferians, just like there's people that are against the Luciferians. And unfortunately, like right now, the people that have been holding the microphone have been the Luciferians, so they can just say whatever, and then label it, the U.S. says when it's just Obama, or the CIA says when it's just like really still Obama. It's just like basically it's all coming from that political mindset. And I think we're going to get more into that in tomorrow's broadcast with Jim Fetzer. Dr. Fetzer was going to be coming on in tomorrow's broadcast. But we're going to get into some more of the news, which is kind of tied into what we were just talking about here, because it seems like the CIA has released like a bunch of documents related to what they refer to as the Stargate, which is a remote viewing program. And back during the Cold War, before like the internet and modern technology, they were exploring like ESP, and things like that as forms of intelligence gathering. And in fact, they had quite a bit of success. And we've covered this before, like these remote viewing documents, but this is resurfaced in the mainstream news. And I just kind of want to see what your take is on ESP and remote viewing and the like. Do you think it can happen? Have you ever encountered anything like that?
Oh yeah, I would definitely say that ESP, extrasensory perception, definitely having the ability to have psychic abilities. I mean, the evidence of psychic abilities, it's overwhelming. Whenever you start looking at, even some of the science behind it, it definitely makes sense as well. I mean, the fact that we have things such as indigo children, star children, however you want to look at them, people that are growing up that have these kinds of these I guess extra normal abilities, these supernatural abilities, that's very real. I mean, just the other day, I put up an article about how, whether or not we're asking whether or not we're misdiagnosing children with ADHD or ADD, and whether or not these are children that are indigo children. The idea behind that is because with things like the Project Stargate, Russell Targ, astral projection, remote viewing, the CIA, and other assets of governmental agencies and the government inspecting these types of things, is very real. I mean, just the other month, really, towards the end of 2016, we heard about how the Chinese had conducted a research back in the 1970s about the evidence of telekinesis, psychokinesis, and things like that. And the reason why I'm trying to give so many different examples of these types of documented cases, documented occurrences of these types of things occurring, is because whether whether you want to trust modern science, where it says, yeah, no, this is something that people definitely have, or if you want to look inside yourself and understand that you have these capabilities, regardless, these types of things are occurring. Could I pull out an article for you? Could I read an article for you guys?
Well, yeah, real quick, please do.
Okay, real quick. It's real quick. Okay, it's called "Neuroscientists Find Telepathic Abilities in Multiple Autistic Children. Can All Humans Do It?" And it was put up January 16th, and it's from the Alternatives News Network, and it just kind of goes like this. What we label as autism covers a vast spectrum. One autistic child may be able to communicate perfectly and perform normal daily tasks, while other can barely move and still don't know how to communicate at all. You also have children underneath the label known as autistic savants who show extraordinary abilities. This is more commonly referred to as the autism spectrum disorder. Some savants are able to perform extreme mathematical calculations in their head, similar to a calculator into a computer, and others have remarkable artistic abilities spanning across a variety of subjects.
Yeah, well, hold on. I mean, obviously, we could go into a whole report on that, and I totally feel for what you're saying there. I mean, the X-Men walk amongst us, and I think like the thing that people really, what people really need to kind of like think about here is that your mind can be read like an open book, and that's part of the problem of what we're dealing with today. And we're going to get more into that in the premium broadcast. But basically, what we're up against is a hive mind that's communicating in real time via ESP type things, and whether what they're talking to is entities from a different dimension, or whether it's more technology driven with synthetic telepathy, or is it a mixture of both? I mean, I think like that's up for debate, but things are much more complicated than people think. And as part of the resistance, who's trying to survive and dodge the minefields and things like that, you need to be aware that the dark side is reading your mind and is contemplating its moves based on what you're thinking. And not many people realize this, but this is why they're able to position themselves in the wrong place at the wrong time and work in harmony. And you may not know the ways that they're attacking you, but believe me, the game is much more complicated than people think. But I kind of want to move on with the stories, and we got to get Laurie on and stuff like that. And we got this other awareness campaign that we're running after this broadcast. So fortunately, EJ, we're just going to keep running through the news. But I feel for you. People,
understandable.
Check out Freedom Faction. We're going to leave a link to his page eventually in the comments, but you can look it up, Freedom Faction. I think there's a couple of them, so we'll have to leave a link. If you got time, EJ, throw a comment there in the stream where people can find you, and we'll try and pin it up there later. But definitely be sure to check out EJ's page. But we're going to keep going on through like some of the other topics here. Final speech from Joe Biden, and they're all doing their final speech over and over again. It's like every day it's a new final speech. It's just like, can't they leave already? But just a couple more days. In any case, what's notable about this final speech is Joe Biden's like, oh, we're losing the progressive liberal democratic order. And now they've kind of like renamed the New World Order as the Liberal Democratic Order. And we saw this in their ODNI report as well on the quote-unquote Russian hacking. We covered this where, like, basically in one of the paragraphs in the key points, they're like, this has been a threat to the liberal democratic order. And, it's just like, what is this that they're talking about? But they're feeling the heat, which kind of gives, I think, every Trump supporter kind of reassurance that, the libtards are feeling so bad about what's going on here, and all the Luciferians are looking gloomy and stuff. And they're coming on television and they're writing the report saying, this is the end of the liberal democratic order. I mean, what do you, it's just like, it feels good. It feels good to see things like that. But, I mean, what do you think? I mean, how many libtards do you see on a daily basis? Do you see a bunch of them where you're at? I mean, do you see a lot of the gothics, the men dressing up like women kind of thing?
Only at night, and thankfully not in my city. They are a entire city different, and I don't have, that's in the capital. I don't have to deal with that. Thankfully, I have to deal with a whole nother type. But I'm glad. If you ask me, I'm glad that we have these people on the run. I'm glad that, if anything, this populist movement that we're part of, or whatever you want to call it, the truther movement, I'm glad that we're having an effect against the New World Order, and that they are having to expose themselves. I mean, one of the things that's kind of got me wondering is what do you think this New World Order is that they're trying to say? I know they're trying to label it as the liberal world order, and we know that is still the New World Order. But what do you think this new World Order is?
Well, it's the same Luciferian occult, but now you nailed the head. You nailed it right on the head there, saying now they've been forced to expose themselves, and especially with the Podesta emails. I mean, they couldn't even deny it. They were like, yeah, this stuff is true, but let's not think about that. Let's think about how it got exposed. That was the electronic Watergate. And it's just it's all come out. I mean, it's just a huge catastrophe for the Luciferians. And they've been exposed. And that's one thing that they can't handle is the light. Now, I just kind of want to move on to a different story, which is kind of interesting yet relevant as well. Animation shows that new probe that fell into Titan. It's like one of the moons, the Saturn, or I think Saturn. They're showing this new animation now, and it's so cartoony, just like all of the other stuff that they keep showing from NASA. It's so fake. It's unbelievable, and I don't want to say you have to see it, but in their animation, at first they show first they say animation, and then they say then it cuts to a different scene. They're like, this is the actual footage, but it still looks super cartoony. And in the landing, it's just impossible the way there's a cut scene and everything is just fully exposed, and it's just more of the same stuff. I mean, what are they hiding with their their photoshopped images of the Earth and the Moon and stuff like that? I mean, what do you think? Do you think that there's something else out there, or do you think that we're all alone in this universe?
I feel like that becomes a tricky topic. I mean, obviously we know NASA's covering up stuff. Otherwise, we wouldn't have things like SpaceX, the privatization of space exploration. We wouldn't have all the things that we have. But as far as us being out alone here in the universe, I think what would you define as a life form? Something that's interdimensional, something that's spiritual, something that has a body and a form, or something like that. I feel like we may have been visited in the past by entities, or even had other entities living here with us. But I think when it comes to the alien question, we have to realize, well, what is alien? Because we most certainly have people that have been either possessed, people that have been walk-ins, people that are hosts. There's a number of things that would be considered with alien that comes with that whole idea. But as far as NASA covering up things, you got to take with whatever NASA says and whatever NASA puts out there with a grain of salt. Find yourself find other amateur astrologists and astronomers, people that are doing it themselves. I'm not saying don't distrust NASA, but I'm always saying filter your information. Know what you're taking in, the same way you do with your body. Just know what you're taking in and understand that they are involved with some cover-ups and that they do certain things.
Yeah. Well, it kind of seems like and we've covered some of these topics before and things that are related, but it seems like that there is this whole deep compartmentalized program that is part NASA and part other corporations and other entities, and in fact that some of the things that they're hiding with these photoshopped images of the Earth may be advanced technology that is being used in a militaristic way. But we're not going to segue into all of that here just yet. We're going to continue on with the mainstream news coverage and analysis.
Let's do it.
Let's see. EU needs independent defense, says French Prime Minister after Trump's NATO comment. I mean, the Europeans are panicking. They're feeling like the U.S. may defund NATO. We don't know. I kind of doubt that it'll go there. But we've always kind of felt that the European Union is going on a different trajectory than we are, and eventually it's going to come to heads because while we're complaining about the Luciferianism and the problems that we have in our country, out there it's an even more advanced stage of metamorphosis of Luciferianism. It's even like, there's a whole lot less people of faith out there. You go to the churches out there and there's like no young people. It's just like, you can tell it's like a different mindset, different world, and they're on a different trajectory, and they're trying to drag us with them. But but what I kind of see setting up is that eventually, there's going to be a new Cold War, and it's going to be us versus them, if you can believe that. And I think this is kind of like setting up the stage. I kind of want to move on because I want to get Laurie Alexander on the line eventually here. We got Trump operative Roger Stone survives assassination attempt. What do you make of that? I mean, how credible do you find that story? What were some of the things that stuck out to you about that story, if you followed that one?
Well, I definitely, I watched a lot of InfoWars whenever they were covering all the things that was going on with the debate, and I definitely saw Roger Stone, pop his head up occasionally, have his conversation and deliver great points. But to find out that he had been missing in action due to this poisoning, now that's something that I can see that being, legitimate, because he is kind of like a tertiary character involved in all of this stuff, somewhat of like a middleman, and he would be the perfect person to poison. But I think right now I'm going to have to hold my reservations and see what's going to happen first, because I've seen some of the pictures of him. He definitely does look a little bit different from before. He definitely looks obviously affected by the actual sickness, and so that says something in like the potency of it. So clearly he could have been affected.
We'll have to take him. We'll have to take him at face value on that one. But I was just going to say that we should all kind of be mindful of this type of treachery, because the dark side is operating in every city and every town, and it's looking for victims, and it's looking for people to attack. Yeah, that's what it does, and I think that we should all be mindful and extra careful about the food we eat, the coffee that we go out and drink. Kind of like, go to open kitchen restaurants if you can. If you have to eat out. But be a little more careful about what you're uptaking, what you're ordering, what you're buying, and what you're consuming, because there is an active program to target patriots and Christians alike. And they're using the industrial complex as a tool. And today it's so easy with fidelity cards, credit card purchases, your profiles and stuff like that. They can basically tell where you're going to go, what you're going to order, what you're going to buy before you do it. On multiple different fronts. And if you're always ordering pizza on pizza night, ordering the pizza and just thinking like everything's going to be awesome, you might want to think again about that. Literally in this
they have operatives everywhere.
They do, and
they have operatives everywhere,
and they're communicating not only through technology, but through some other type of hive mind complex. And our growing suspicion is that it has something to do with telepathy, either synthetic or natural. And there are numerous studies on both. Synthetic telepathy has been around since the 1960s in the Cold Wars. It's old tech. There's volumes and volumes of research and documents out on it. And it goes to reason, if there's synthetic telepathy that exists, then real telepathy must exist as well. And go ahead.
Can I touch on that real quick? The fact that you're talking about how these Luciferians, with their hive mind mindset, how they're communicating both with technology, esoterically, and through some occult means as well. The spirits that they have, the demons that these people interact with, they can send messages, they can relay things, they can whisper in their ears. They're their own types of messengers. They can share demons, they can share mindsets, they can share principalities and types of things like that. That's what we have to realize. So whenever they're creating these hubs, these churches, these after school programs, whenever they're doing this, what they're basically getting engaged in is essentially putting a totem or some kind of consecrating the ground somehow to where they're doing a massive ritual, you see. So them communicating through this hive mind mindset is through them using things like their spiritual means, spiritual communications, through channeling, getting messages. You see, that's their mindset. And I've talked about this as well on my own podcast, how naturally we have I believe naturally we have all the different types of things and abilities that technology represents. I feel like, we have telepathy. I could send you a message, but because we don't exercise this type of capability. We just message each other through Facebook or through a text. Obviously that ability is dampened, but these Luciferians, these Satanists, these people who practice this type of occult and satanic magic every day, obviously their powers are going to be strong because of the way in which they're going about it.
Well,
as I said
practice
before,
makes perfect. I mean, you're exactly right on that. I mean, we're being robbed our spirituality. They don't want us practicing.
Yep.
They don't want us knowing anything beyond like the secular, the physical. And yet on the flip side, they spend their times, fine tuning their occult skills. And there are some there, and it's even in the catechism, it talks about this type of things. Even clairvoyancy, that's another thing that we're up against. Not only are these people communicating amongst themselves through extrasensory means, but they're also able to foretell certain aspects of future events. And that's another dynamic to the whole equation, and it's why they're able to advance their agenda. And if we're going to be serious about fighting the spiritual war, we need to bring all of our assets to the table. Now, some of it obviously is taken care of through providence and doing the right thing for the right reasons. But there are other things that we can fine tune as well. Given our intellects, given our scientific reasoning, there are other tools at our disposal. And this all comes back to being a practitioner of your faith. Let no one rob you of that. Be faithful to your daily routine, and keep on fighting the good fight. And I'm sorry to cut you off, EJ, but we're really gonna keep moving on in the stories and stuff. And be sure everybody to check out Freedom Faction, EJ's page. Links will be provided.
It's understandable.
But obviously,
thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. I mean, we'll do this again, but I'm super pressed for time, and we're already running over. And it's just like time goes too fast.
Sorry.
With you. No. You're awesome conversationalist, and I wish I had more time right now to extend the conversation. I really do. But
I'll get you on my show.
There you go. There you go.
We'll round it up.
We'll keep doing it. We'll keep doing it. This is fun. Let's see what else we got. Amazon patenting a highway network that controls self-driving cars and trucks, and they're starting to like retool and reshape. It's just kind of like Google, how they started as a search engine. Amazon is just kind of like starting as like an e-store, but they're branching out into everything, and they're becoming like some kind of like virus in a sense. And
pretty powerful.
All these companies, in the future, in just a few years, like everything is going to be dominated just by a few different companies. All of your food, all of your shopping, all of everything is just going to be controlled by a few select groups, and the rest of us are just going to be like basically indentured servants, working our way to buy meaningless things. But this is part of the post-human
mark of the beast.
Yeah, Skynet, future that's coming our way, and we're funding our own destruction. Let's see what else we got. I think that's pretty much the news. I'm going to try and see if we can get Laurie Alexander on to see if she's got any other stories that she wants to add in. I know she had a pretty important spin to the Toronto thing. Let's see if this call will go through. It kind of looks like it's going through, so we may have Laurie Alexander on the line here very shortly. Oh, it failed. Okay, so we're going to go to Plan B. I'm going to get you right back on, EJ. I'm going to see if I can get Laurie on, and then we'll get you back in, because I know it works that way. We're having some technical difficulties with...
Understandable. And
so we'll get you back in just a couple minutes. I want to bring Laurie in and give her a couple minutes on the mic here, and then we'll go from there. So we'll catch up with you real quick. Don't go anywhere, folks. Anyways, it's live television, folks. I'll see if we can get Laurie Alexander on the line. We'll try again. If not, we'll go straight back to EJ, and we'll finish off the broadcast with some insightful thinking. So we're still waiting, and it looks like we have Laurie Alexander live on Stranger Than Fiction News. How are you doing, Laurie?
I'm doing great, Brother Truthers. How are you guys?
Well, we're doing good. Well, we're going to have to get EJ back on the line, because we had to go through Plan B to get you on, and we'll add him into the group here in a couple minutes. But what were you saying about that, the Toronto case, that there was another case that it reminded you of? It was like a couple or something like that?
Yeah. Toronto case totally reminds me of the Canadian case from about I think it was 2014, Kevin Annett, and the International Tribunal to the Crimes of Church and State, the ITCCS. What they did is they uncovered the Ninth Gate cult, which was a child trafficking between Canada and the UK. And actually worldwide, but they concentrated on the UK. They found bones of hundreds of children, and what Kevin Annett did was he took the proof, he took eyewitness accounts, and he...
That was me. I do apologize. Yeah,
okay.
Yeah. Sorry about that, folks.
Okay. He took them to the courts in Brussels, and the court came back with a conviction. And so there is right now, unfortunately, there are civil warrants for the Queen, the Pope, leaders of UK, and several international leaders. But the reason why they can't issue these warrants is because these people fall under they fall under what's it called?
Some
political
sort of
asylum.
immunity. Yeah, I was going to say.
The political asylum. You know, the Queen lives behind a wall that she's protected under. You can't really go in there. You know, it's sovereign land. Same with the Pope. So, but yeah, this is something that the world tried to silence this, and they kind of brushed it under the carpet for a while until the Jimmy Savile came out in the UK, and then it kind of came back to the forefront. So what we're seeing here is nothing new. This is something that we've been trying to bring the light to for so long, and this whole Pizzagate has definitely reopened our chance as truthers to put this information out there and to open up the eyes to people and let these people know that every 90 seconds in the United States a child goes missing. They go somewhere, because a lot of these kids are not we don't have Amber Alerts, we don't have police reports being made, but these children are going somewhere.
It's funny that you would mention that, and you've made a couple of points I just kind of want to touch on. Is like the whole Brussels thing. We're putting out a report. It's coming out here pretty soon. After this broadcast, it's going to be another awareness campaign, but it touches on like one of the former ambassadors to Belgium that was convicted of our ambassador to Belgium that was convicted of sex trafficking, and he was like picking up, recruiting children for sex acts in Belgium. And there's this like huge connection. We've talked about the Brussels connection before, and what their national soccer team is basically like, it's like the Devils and stuff like that. And it's just like a whole different world out there. And and then there's like this other connection. Oh, what else did you say? It was the it'll come back to me.
The Jimmy Savile.
It was something else, but it was the Amber Alert system. Remember that girl that got picked up in Haiti, the Hillary aide, whatever her name was?
Yes, the one was murdered.
No, the different one. That was the investigative reporter. But there is like this. It's in this next report that's coming up, but it's huge. This is the one that's probably going to blow the mind out of everybody. Anyways, there's this girl from the Clinton Foundation that got picked up in Haiti for child trafficking, and she got bailed out by President Clinton. But basically, that was like one of the big things covered in Pizzagate. But basically, that girl changed her name and became the board member, the supervisor of the Amber Alert system. And it's huge. It's huge. Like these people, they infiltrate into the positions where they can have access to children, like a crack fiend, has access to a crack dealer somehow. But that's what they do. And now imagine like one of the people running the Amber Alert system is basically somebody that has been suspected of human trafficking, and they were arrested in Haiti. But that's one of the things that we're touching on. It's going to start out with the Seth Rich case, but it's going to extend into Pizzagate and some of the other crazy things that have been discovered. So look forward to that. Go ahead, Laurie. I didn't mean to cut you off and kind of segue there, but
no, that's okay. But we're seeing pedophilia. It's they're labeling it now a mental disorder. It's not a crime. Bestiality is legal. What they're doing is they're basically desensitizing us into the acceptance of these abominations. I don't know if you saw recently, I just exposed a Netflix. There's a new series coming out. It's a Netflix original called the Santa Clarita Diet. It stars Drew Barrymore as her diet is basically cannibalism.
Yeah, and it's like that movie Raw that just came out too. They're pushing it. I mean, they're pushing it like pedophilia. They're pushing this cannibalism, and I mean, there's just so much stuff. I mean, we could go around and around. I kind of want to just briefly mention, like, in the Luca Magnotta case, which was another Canadian case. It was the gay butcher that chopped up his gay lover on YouTube and then had sex with the body and ate it, like, on video. And then fled to Paris. Yeah, and then fled to Paris. But, like, basically, like, during those investigations, they were talking about midnight cannibal trains. And, like, the whole subway system, the underground systems at night are a whole different place. And they're venues for huge venues for occult activity. But, yeah, I mean, this is, it's getting out of hand. It truly is.
Well, it's getting out of hand, but thankfully, I mean, people that are out there that are saying, Pizzagate isn't real, it's, it's all a psyop and everything, and regardless of what it is, I don't happen to personally believe it's a psyop. I happen to believe it's true because I've been investigating this for a number of years. But regardless of whether it's true or not, we can now use this to further, like I said, people's awareness that this stuff is going on. It's biblical. It goes back to the Babylonian times. It goes back to the child sacrifices to Moloch. Yeah. I mean, this is nothing.
Well, if they want to deny Pizzagate, they can, but they certainly can't deny spirit cooking and the ties to the Hollywood celebrities and to the imperial masters. And I think, like, regardless, there's obviously a huge child sex trafficking problem, and I think, like, this is one of the main reasons why these people get into this occultism, is so that they can abuse children. And again, it'd be different if we were dealing with people that are baking cookies, but in fact these people are molesting children. I want to bring EJ back in just for, like, closing comments from everybody, and that way you guys can tell the audience where we can find everybody and stuff like that. But we're gonna have to do this again. Unfortunately, we kind of ran over in time with EJ.
Oh, it's okay. I'm just here taking massive notes, and absolutely.
But I mean, we're gonna do this again. Hopefully, EJ will come on. I kind of see it ringing over there. There's EJ from Freedom Faction. I do apologize, EJ. We were having some technical difficulties and got into a conversation, and it just kind of carried over. How are you doing, EJ?
I'm hanging in there, my friend. How are you?
Well, we're still out there. So, listen, I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to give closing comments and to let the audience know where to find you. Just, like, whatever's on your mind, what you're thinking about everything right now, whether it be politics or the Pizzagate madness. Just let people think, or tell people what you're thinking and where they can find you.
You want to go first, Laurie?
Oh, sure. I just want to let people know that, there is a massive amount of information out there. Do your due diligence and do your research and try to figure out what is the truth and what is not. There's a quantum computer that's hard at work reading your thoughts, anticipating your movements and reactions to the outside stimuli. So you need to be one step ahead of that. And, research. Like I always tell people, don't believe a word I say. Research, do your own due diligence, and come to your own conclusions. So, and you can find me on Facebook at Exposing Satanic World Government, and you can also find me at the Underground Resistance Network on Facebook, and also my channel is the Underground Resistance Network on YouTube, and you can also find me at Factions of Freedom with EJ.
All right, we'll try and throw a comment in the comment section of the stream so people can bookmark that. We'll try and do that when we can, but right now we're busy supervising other things, unfortunately. So please, EJ, let us know what you're thinking in closing comments and where people can find you, and so on and so forth.
Closing comments. This stuff with Pizzagate, me and Laurie have definitely talked about it. We've had a show on it as well. If you guys want something to look at, go look at Ted Gunderson. He's a retired head of the FBI. He's talked about this as well, how there's an underground satanic networks that are trafficking children. This is unfortunately nothing new. These people are highly satanic, highly occultic, and they've been doing this. I mean, what is Planned Parenthood? You should listen to children like the Hampstead case. It's incredible the amount of evidence that's actually out there that supports the idea of Pizzagate. So for all the people to say that it's not real, unfortunately, that's your denial, and the evidence is overwhelming. Please, as Laurie said herself, do your research. You've got to know. You've got to learn yourself. You've got to teach yourself. Unlearn everything you thought you knew, because they were trying to tell you lies. You've got to understand who your enemy is. You've got to understand what's going on. But closing thoughts, where you guys can find me, occasionally, if I'm not running around eating tacos, you can find me on the Underground Resistance Network with Laurie and Robbie D talking about all things crazy, all things esoteric, all things occult. Sometimes they know things deep. They know a lot more. Definitely check out the Underground Resistance Network. You can also find me on my own channel, Factions of Freedom. We have a weekly podcast. We do weekly videos as well. We broadcast on YouTube as well as Facebook. We have a podcast that you guys can download, and occasionally we like to talk. We like to tackle pretty much everything that you heard here and more. So yeah, there's a lot that you guys can get. There's a lot of information out there, and people like myself, such as and Ron Johnson, and Laurie Alexander, we do the work for you, so you guys don't have to seem crazy, but we do it just so you know that you're not the only one that has these questions. You have to go out and learn yourself. You have to teach yourself of what's going on. Take what we say and understand that this is coming from a place of compassion, but you guys have got to do the extra work. We're trying to do the brunt and compile it so you can go out there and learn for yourself, but that's all that we can do.
Yeah, I mean, excellent resume there. Obviously, we're all trying to do what we can to get the information out there the best way that we can, and we're trying to put it in a format that's easy for people to share on their networks. And I think that's part of the process of continuing to raise awareness. But we can all be a superhero in our communities, and do what we can to fight evil in the many different ways that it manifests itself. I want to thank everybody for coming on this broadcast. Appreciate you guys spending time over here on this network and tuning in and sharing this information. But you got to keep fighting the fight. We're making a difference. We're raising awareness. Don't be distracted by the mainstream narrative. They're trying to talk to you about football and sports, and they're trying to tell you that the truth is fake news and that the fake news is the truth. I think everybody understands what is going on here, and if you get hung up on the Pizzagate thing, then just go back to the spirit cooking, because that is something they cannot deny. That is something that is there on the video evidence. You've got the photographic evidence. You've got the emails. I guess the Pizzagate thing was a segue, and eventually they try to turn it into a hacking thing, like, oh, they were hacked, and that way you shouldn't be paying attention to the content of those emails. You shouldn't be paying attention to the content of the video footage that they put out themselves of performing mock sacrifices and mock cannibalism, and that's just the stuff at the surface. But like what's behind there is basically substantiated by the decades of ritualistic satanic sex abuse research that has been conducted by clinics, physicians, psychologists, psychiatrists, law enforcement. Decades of research. There is no denying what looks evil is evil. If it walks like a duck, it's probably a frickin' duck. Appreciate everybody tuning in. This is Ron Johnson from Stranger Than Fiction News.
The crazy part is Ron didn't even know that me and Laurie knew each other. But we'll have to do something about that, maybe even have him on the show. That's all I really got for you guys. However, I will say definitely make sure you check out Stranger Than Fiction News. Clearly, Ron is on to something. That is information you need, and he does it every day, almost. Seems like every day. And as always, check out the Underground Resistance Network with Laurie. I mean, you guys, this is why we're doing it, because we're having an effect. You guys see what we're capable of doing. You understand, like Ron said, you are part of the resistance. You are part of the people who want to make a change. You are being the agents of change. But that's all I really got for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noisera, Freedom Faction, out.